let's beat the alarm and move on to our next team. Do you want to take us through them?
Yes, we have the $3 billion valuated Charlotte Hornets, which I laughed in the doc. You had $3 billion with several question marks next to it. Kind of wild. Buy an NBA. You know what, Dan? I'm thinking about buying an NBA team. It seems like a good investment.
We can't get in now. The bubble's gonna burst. Like this is like buying high on a meme stock, like GameStop when it was at like $500 a share.
If the Hornets are worth $3 billion, there's no such thing as a bad NBA team investment. Besides that, so ownership change, I think it's pretty much done now, right? Michael Jordan as a majority owner is going to sell his stake, will stay on as a minority owner. Who knows what that's going to do to how Charlotte operates and spends, but based on the level of success they had with Michael Jordan as the principal owner,
which is to say none,
some success would constitute an improvement. So good odds there. Their key free agents, PJ Washington is restricted. Dennis Smith Jr., they have non-bird rights on him. Kelly Oubre, Miles Bridges. Extension eligible candidates, Lamelo Ball, eligible for his max rookie scale extension. We could talk about whether he should get that or not momentarily. Their cap situation, they have about $28 million in space, or can get there if they renounce basically everybody. Can be over the cap and open up the bigger MLE if they carry the cap holds for PJ Washington and Kelly Oubre. No trade exceptions. Their biggest needs, like everybody, could use some wings. Depending on who they bring back, that might be mitigated a little bit because you do have Kelly Oubre and Bridges just kind of sitting there. They could use another advantage creator, lead guard who could play with Lamelo or off the ball, on the ball or off the ball. Either way would work because Lamelo is like a 40+% catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Another big veteran 5 maybe to back up Mark Williams, who I think I'd feel okay about going forward with as my starting center, but I think you wouldn't want him to be the only guy there. So Dan, any other needs that I did not get to, or would you want to touch the Lamelo Ball extension situation? Anywhere you'd like to start with the Hornets, big picture stuff.
I think we need to. So one of the places to start would actually be with Miles Bridges, who has to serve the balance of a 30-game suspension after felony domestic violence charges. He was out all of last season, but for most of that, he remained unsigned. And it felt like they very much just tacked on, like, or they prorated, like his suspension was 30 games. And they were like, well, 20 of it from last season, then 10 from this season. I'm assuming he's going to be back. The circumstances are absolutely horrific, and that it needs to be said. It goes without saying, but also needs to be said. I don't know what they're going to do with him now that ownership has changed. I know that you're selling to a minority owner that was in there to begin with. And I don't know what team is going to think they have even if you believe in redemption, and we know that, his girlfriend has come out and like spoken on his behalf. And I think that makes it maybe a little bit more difficult to grapple with the situation. But if you believe in, redemptive arcs, I don't know which team is going to come in, pay him, and think that they can survive the, public relations blowback, I would say there. I expect him to be back in Charlotte, and I expect this team to operate over the cap is basically what I'm getting at. And I hate having to talk about like transitioning to stuff like the actual basketball, but that's just what's going to happen. And so his money's going to be on the books. I'm curious to see what PJ Washington fetches. I think a lot of people are lower on PJ Washington than I am. And so they're going to have the bigger MLE, and I'm wondering how much appeal that is. Like how appealing are they to free agents in this market? And then what direction are they going in? Which the Lamelo Ball stuff, my prediction would be that he just gets the max. Maybe it's 5 years with no player options. Maybe there's a player option at the end of it, but I think that would be the biggest haggle point. Would you agree that he'll get the 5-year max?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that he's just going to get the full boat. And like, honestly, it's funny. I say we, like everyone's thinking the same way, but I sort of think about him as one of the rare rookies or guys on their rookie scale deals that might not. I mean, everybody signs that second deal if the max is on the table, but he feels like one of the ones where if he didn't, because he wanted to be in a different market, it would be less stunning for him than it would be for a lot of basically everybody else, right? Like, do you have just that little inkling of like maybe ownership change, alters that? But he feels like someone that you probably aren't, as the Hornets, in a position to say, no player option on the 5th year. Like he's going to get what he wants, I think.
Yeah, language that could elevate it to, the 30% max if he makes All NBA. I would probably have agreed with you before. That is not the alarm. That is just my phone's going off. I would agree with you before he dealt with all the ankle stuff this past year. And so it's kind of just like you understand how fragile your window might be. He could be someone. This isn't an indictment necessarily on the Charlotte market, but if the Hornets aren't materially better or headed in a distinct direction, because I would say that they feel kind of almost formless right now, where there's talent on this roster, but I just don't know what they are and what their primary aims will be. Is he someone who signs the extension and then it's a year later, like he's trying to agitate his way out with 4 or 5 years left on his contract? Maybe he's that candidate, but I would expect him to sign it, that he will get whatever, and he will end up signing it, and there will be language in there that can elevate it to a all NBA max, or excuse me, a 30% max if he makes all NBA.
You brought up kind of the direction. I think I feel like I'm a little crazy for looking at this roster and like who they could bring back and potentially have the ability to add, and imagine the Hornets as like a real bounce back team. I think like is that off base, just because the case would be LaMelo's back, stays healthy. You bring back PJ Washington, and I think you're probably a little higher on him than I am, but I feel like he's a low end, like he's a starting NBA player and would be like a really luxury six man somewhere, maybe. Bridges, like if we just skip over all the stuff we don't want to talk about, was a borderline all-star the last time he played. And if he's back, then suddenly you've got a guy who was really on, not a breakout track, had really sort of already broken out and had room to get better. I mean, they have enough young talent, like none of their, and I think is probably a lost cause. Kai Jones, nobody knows if he's ever going to be anything. So they've missed a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, Rozier's okay. If Gordon Hayward's healthy, he's, more than just bad money. Like, I'm not saying they're going to win 50, but like, this is absolutely a team that should be in the play-in mix, or maybe like 7-8 in the East. Don't you think? If they go that way. And I don't know if they're going to go that way.
I guess yes, just because you look at the talent drain between injuries to LaMelo. Hayward misses some time again. He had a very good closing kick to the season. Not having Miles Bridges, I guess maybe there's the potential for. And look, they're going to have the number 2. We haven't talked about that. The number 2 pick in this year's draft, which that changes. I can't believe it took us this long to get there. And I would have taken, like, I don't want to date this, but like you're going to have Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson unless you move the pick. And so that infusion of talent, which, we talk about them needing wings, and you mentioned, they have Cody Martin. They have, if he's going to be healthy, he was also injured this year. They could bring back Kelly Oubre Jr. I just don't view him or Bridges or Washington as really wings, even though a lot of their defensive assignments profile as them.
Yeah.
Brandon Miller checks that box. Or you have Scoot Henderson, who's just another, we talked about them needing another alpha creator who can work with LaMelo. And LaMelo could pretty much work with any alpha creator because he's able to shoot off the ball. And I think, as Zach Lowe has pointed out, LaMelo felt like he was a little bit of a chucker last year anyway. And so maybe displacing him helps. So I almost feel like you can't go wrong, even if you have a preference, unless you believe there's this huge gap between Scoot and Miller. I think it's probably, I don't know that I would peg them as a candidate to go be 7th or 8th in the East, though. Just there's going to be, you're assuming a rookie, a high profile rookie in here that's going to play a ton of minutes. Further development for Mark Williams. What does the center position look like in the minutes that he's not on the court? What does it kind of look like? Do you just get back? You didn't have Miles Bridges for the entire year. If he comes back, what does the Miles Bridges, PJ Washington dynamic look like? What does he look like? This team just has too many variables for me to trust that they would be in the play-in mix.
Fair enough. You want to talk about some of their targets, something you're thinking of for? Well, actually, let's back up. We'll date this even more. We both agree that you just take Scoot, right? And you stop messing around with fit with Brandon Miller. We're there.
It's just you take Scoot, and okay. I think him and LaMelo could work anyway. But I also think you're not at the point in your rebuild or your timeline where you can realistically prioritize fit over the best player available.
Yeah.
Targets for them, looking again, I focused on the bigger MLE. Matisse Thybulle, restricted free agent, taking a flyer on him just to get someone in here. Like, the defense of the Hornets improved a lot as the year went on. But let's throw just another like all defense guy in there. Dwight Powell, just a sort of a backup veteran 5, can help you on the glass. Maybe if you give him enough spacing, he'll do some damage as a finisher at the basket. Josh Richardson, Torrey Craig, they would be a good Bruce Brown destination too, like as a team to offer the bigger MLE.
Yeah, and I think if you do that, then you maybe start looking at trading Terry Rozier, because you could play Brown with Ball, or he could be your backup point guard. He's proved he could handle that job with the Nuggets. I think another guy. So anytime we're going to throw Tybal in there, I just think, well, what about Dylan Brooks? Like if the MLE is going to get you Dylan Brooks, you might have to think about it. Like just as honestly, like for the money, Tybal might be the better pick, but Brooks is just such a good defender. And I don't know. I would hope that we'll probably talk about him several other times, but I would hope that like he would be on better behavior here.
I don't know how much of this was, Terry Rozier, the slow start, Lamelo misses time, but like they were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league last year. And especially if you're going from, if Scoot Henderson's going to play a bunch of minutes or just caking in Brandon Miller's rookie season, we just named a few very like players who are going to shrink the court. I mean, Tybal hit threes in Portland. Dylan Brooks is going to take and miss a lot of threes.
Yeah. I think just losing Ball for so much of the season, who's arguably your best shooter and the guy that creates the most good threes, it's just like you can't recover from that. And they just didn't have the talent. Want to talk about some trade potential guys, just decent fits if things shake out how we'd like them to, or you want to hit any other free agents?
No, very quickly on the trade, since our alarm went off for anyone who could hear it. Just, I don't like, you could look all over the place. You could skew, like, do we go big time? Like, we have the number 2 pick, or do we look at Karl Anthony Towns or Brandon Ingram / Zion Williamson? Or do you just try and thread the needle? Can you get in on the OG Anunoby sweepstakes? I think he'd be a great fit for this roster. Drew Holiday, if the Bucks are looking to cut money or change things up, or do you just target someone like a Jay Sean Tate, where it's, hey, let's get in here. Like, that's someone who might be a truer wing defender or point of attack guy for us than we currently have. I don't know if anyone else brings to mind for you.
I mean, if we're going to get thorough, I think you just throw in guys like Pascal Siakam would be someone else. It just, again, depending on which direction we're going here, because they do have the ability to create not enough cap space to just take somebody on with a massive salary. But if you've got number 2 and the ability to package a little more salary, you could take on a big number. So, there's almost nobody that is like cost prohibitive for them if they really are motivated to do that. But anytime I see OG thrown out there, I'm just, maybe Siakam, just add him too, because if Toronto's willing to think about moving one, they ought to be open to moving the other.